Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Happy Gatty Crypto here. So we've got Tobias on Zaradar for another podcast episode. It's been a while. Tobias has just been so busy dealing with everything that's been going on. They've had to pick up the slack from what we know was to be the system beforehand, and this system's really working out, it seems. So Tobias, thank you for coming on again. We really appreciate it. How's things going? How's things been?
Hey Jay, thanks for having me, mate. And yeah, it's been hectic the last few days, but I think overall, looking back at the month of January, it's been above my own personal expectations, and they are typically fairly high. I try to set a high standard for myself, and then I try to encourage people to follow it. But all in all, I think we have a team that is, competent in dealing with the software client. We're clearly gonna make some bugs along the way that we might have to fix and so on, but we can reason about this platform as a whole. We have different players in the team who seem to be uh, gelling well together. Is that a term? They're bonding well together, so we have good chemistry, especially now that Jacob decided to leave. And that means that we have a group of experienced developers who are largely Superman and myself. And then we have a group of regular developers like Frag and Vin, who are, I think, very much the future of the Layer 1 team, because by and large, Superman and I, we're both 43, we're old farts. And then we have some juniors coming up with Sorrow and Rage Pie, and all of these people seem to be focused on solving problems and writing software, and that is really all we can hope for a software development team. I'm also in particularly pleased with Bernami's work in the team. He's done invaluable work to help me keep the project management aspect of it going, so I could sort of be like a free role moving all over the place. And I think we are in the process now of testing the release of the 105 and getting that out to the validators. And if everything works well, maybe there might be a hitch or two in the testing, but if everything works in accordance with expectations and that goes into mainnet, then I'm fairly confident that we will meet our goals for the first quarter, and quite possibly exceed them to the point where we actually begun last week asking the COC to start scouting out potential stretch goals for our Q1 efforts. And we started racking up some potential ad hoc items, but then unfortunately we lost a few days here with the latest drama. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we are on track. It looks good. We are confident. We have a few complexities that we are still not totally done with, but overall, I'm confident that we'll get everything done.
And for those listening, it's the V1, it's 105, isn't it? This upgrade
Yeah.
that's rolling out. It's February 14th.
It's February 14th, and the trick with the V1 or 105 upgrade is inherently that we have to fix the migration state for the chain, so we can actually do the 204 upgrade later. And then that's why the 105 is an interesting patch, because it's the first time we're actually utilizing the upgrade handlers, and it's a very small thing we're doing. We're basically just setting it to the equivalent of empty. But that is what we need to initialize the system, and that will then allow us to start applying future upgrade handlers from all the other modules that we use, which in turn will then allow us to sidestep the Genesis problem. Because by and large, the problem that we have is that Cosmos chains are slow. They're not built for high performance general computing. And you can only put so much information into a single module before it starts cracking. And we have a shit ton of information in the WASM module because everybody's building DApps, which is great. But the type of DApps that we have are taking up a lot of space, and that just runs into a general purpose issue with the Cosmos architecture that makes it not viable to use the import-export feature anymore. And this is why these upgrade handlers are so essential. So they are the, you could say, make or break point for Q1. If we make all of that work, that's great. And we have our best minds working on it. Superman and Vin has the lead on it, but Frag and I are working in close tandem with them while also doing other stuff. And right now, the internal consensus is in the team is that we're in a good place, and we don't have anybody who feel alarmed about, anything going wrong or stuff like that.
So, just quickly, so 204 is this leading to a more expansive update for the system itself? Because like you're saying, the modules get to a point where they can't hold enough information, they begin to crack, and you're speaking about a genesis. Is this to avoid pretty much having to start a new, like from new again, not a new blockchain, but starting from scratch?
Basically, you can think of the blockchain as a distributed database, right? And whenever you do a Genesis export, you're basically serializing the state of the system into a file, so you can then deserialize it later, right? And serializing is like saving in a computer game, and deserializing is like loading, right? So import-export is just save load. The problem is that each of these key value stores that are used for the modules to store data, they can only digest a certain amount of information, which peaks out at roughly 3.7 gigabytes. Now, Cosmos was built primarily to manage very specialized application-specific chains that do, a few things, very well. And then they have a DApp layer on top that you can extend to some point. But you want, in general, you want Cosmos chains to deal with small values distributed across a lot of modules. That will give you the optimal performance. The problem with the XWASM module is that the way that works is it basically says that the WASM module keeps all contracts in it, right? So when you create a smart contract and I create a smart contract and so on, all of these smart contracts, they're basically slowly amended to the WASM keeper. And the WASM keeper doesn't have a check that says that I have gotten too much data now, so I shouldn't take any more because then I can't import-export. So what ends up happening is that the database itself has an infinite capacity for us to write data to any module. But whenever we save that module, we can't load it again because the load save procedure saves the module, including your smart contract and my smart contract, as one what we call blob, which is binary large object, right? And that means that it can't load this blob back in and restart the system because the blob exceeds the theoretical size limit in the Cosmos architecture, and then everything falls apart. And this is why the upgrade handlers are the only way to continue going, because then we don't do the load save thing. We just keep patching the state in the active database while the database is running, right? So that's a more complex operation, but it also means that we can allow the system to grow without having to worry about constraining the builders who come in. So overall, it's the better option.
I mean, it sounds like if you do this wrong, or something does go wrong with that WASM handler, we could non-intentionally lose a lot of smart contracts, and rebuilding those means pretty much rebuilding a project, right?
Now you get me into the realm of the nuclear option.
Whoa! I don't like the sound of the nuclear option.
I've already done the research on this, mate, with your
well, you have to. This is the thing, right? In your position, you have to, don't you? You have no choice but to map these things out.
We always have to have a backup plan. There are, I tend to say to people that the reason I love developing software is because anything is possible, right? But whenever you pick something, you opt out of something else. Software development is not this sunshine road trip where you just get to pick all the best outcomes. It's always a trade-off, right? So upgrade handlers is a trade-off because that means that we never really can truly defragment our database. That means that the size of the blockchain itself will just keep on bloating forever to the point where that becomes a problem. But that's so far into the future that it doesn't really matter, right? And then the nuclear trade-off is that, well, we could patch directly to 204 tomorrow if we just scrapped all the WASM code and just redeployed it all. That would obviously be an inconvenience, especially for people like you. But having done the numbers on, who the active DEX players, the active DApp players are and so on, I think Strathcole and I, we came to a conclusion that it's roughly like 6 to 8% of users who would be affected by the nuclear option.
Yeah, because currently we have a big issue with just ghost smart contracts. Contracts that don't do anything. They're from an old system and they're just running on what's left.
Exactly. And the point I'm trying to make here is that I think we are fairly fortunate with the L1 team. I think the L1 team will accomplish their goals and we will succeed in patching to 204. But that doesn't really solve the ghost contract problem.
No.
And this is why, if I look at this from a pure cost benefit perspective, trying to look at this as a LUNC investor, then maybe it's better for us to just nuke all these smart contracts and just deploy 204 in a few days and skip 106 rather than spend the next 2 months on this other thing. Because at the end of the day, the outcome would be roughly the same, especially if we can assist the active smart contracts with reconstituting their reality, if you want to call it that, after we do the full nuclear option. So these are sort of the kind of things that we have to weigh constantly when we deal with the chain, and we try to map out as many potential outcomes as we can, and then we try to carefully weigh things. And I think in the context of this all nodes debacle that has been going on for a better part of a week now, the fact of the matter is that we assessed this situation back in June. We weighed the potential outcomes. We implemented the BFT guard, and then we lolled about how everybody could work around it. And we accepted that we had just had a network halt with an implosion of tokens spraying into the world, which meant that we had totally diluted any type of voting power decentralization and basically given control to a few lucky investors who bought, $1 trillion worth of tokens at the right point in time.
Yeah. So
what we're doing now is basically a slow, reboot of that, which means that worrying about certain things just doesn't really matter, because you have to look at the reality on the ground and try to navigate from there.
It's like cleaning garbage out of the ocean, but not actually addressing the actual issue of its, where it's coming from.
Yeah, exactly.
Blocking it off at the rivers. You've raised actually a vital point here, Tobias, that, there's trillions of coins out there. Coins are what builds VP, not a validator. It's such a silly thing, and it's always been there. It's just suddenly someone's found something to want to, we always get the same thing. Someone's not happy about something, so they blow up, and then once it backfires, they then turn on like the top, whoever's, at the top of that sort of chain, and we just end up back in this thing. But what we're seeing now is you guys are just pushing ahead. The whole talking to me about this nuclear option shows you are.
We're tired of bullshit. We just want to fix things, make a proper stable business environment for real, stable builder to come in and do real things, and then just keep pushing the limits of innovations around, layer 2 edge integrations and so on, because that's where we feel we can make a real difference, and I think that's really what matters. But I think it's it's still tough. I mean, it's we have a lot of stubbornness and tenacity, but I mean, boy, it gets tough once in a while having to deal with some of the bullshit, because what I've learned the hard way, mind you, over the last 7 months is that, I mean, a lot of people on Twitter, they will go, oh, why are you engaging in this? Why are you commenting like this? The fact of the matter is that I don't really get a choice. These things, they just kind of suck me in, right? Ever since we started back in May, whenever two people in what I like to call the proverbial kindergarten, they got into a fight, they would come running to people like Ed and myself and ask us to mediate. I got pulled into the whole all notes thing because Danny, he asked me to come in and mediate, and thank God that he did. But the bottom line here is that we are not really, we don't get the luxury of choosing these things. We just have to step in because we understand that life is about compromise, and extreme views in either end of the scale very rarely serve a purpose for anybody. And this, I think, is something that's worth for people to keep in mind once in a while, is that while ideologies are great and we should all push for certain things, there are also, shall we say, a need for compromise if we are to grow. Otherwise, we will end up as some sort of maximalist, whatever, depending on what camp you're routing for and so on. But that's not really in anybody's interest.
Well, it seems different now with the L1 team, especially with this recent, change of this person leaving, now getting really into it. You seem like, instead of just meeting, going no, and then simply running in opposite directions with a bungee cord attached to both of you, you're going, well, hang on a minute, let's compromise here. Let's work this out. We can do this. Okay, I don't like that, so maybe we can do this. And you're taking different points of view, and you stood up for the community. You're doing a good job from where I'm sitting, in my opinion. I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing about a possible on-ramp that could be coming in the future. Is that a thing?
You mean the Matt Perry suggestion?
No, it was something that came out from one of the COC people had mentioned a on-ramp that's being spoken about if you had enough time because you've been making a good time or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think it's the fiat on-ramp, right?
Yeah.
I'm just no, that's actually the Matt Perry suggestion thingy. So yeah, we had some talks around potentially looking into saying, can we find the time to do this work maybe in Q1? Because I've been slowly trying to assess the viability of us replicating the structure of the L1 team once it becomes a bit more stable onto some sort of layer 2 team, because it's at some point we're going to need layer 2 work done. And I have a few people who can help with that, in particular a guy called Gevik. So I was actually looking at saying, if he wants to come in and do some work for free, if we can chart out, what it actually takes to establish such an on-ramp and so on, maybe that's not a bad idea, right? Because that's a feature that we know the community has asked for. It doesn't really fall within the purview of the layer 1 team, but eventually, as investors and community people and so on, we're gonna need a layer 2 team anyways. So maybe if we have a few layer 2 developers who are willing to do the work, then Steve and I can probably set aside a day a week to manage that as well, and then we can start looking at these things. So that's really what we're looking into. And if push comes to shove, I started as a web developer, so I can probably reason around that kind of stuff if I have to.
So, for the people listening, if you don't understand the difference between L1 and L2, imagine you have a car, you need work doing on the engine. That's likely going to be L1. If you need cosmetics done of how it looks, you're probably going to need an L2 team. That's probably a good way to break it down in a very simple form. But pretty much, there's things that the L1 team do that we don't have enough time for what you pay for the L1 to be doing L2 work, and getting to a system like that, I think the word is it's an inevitability. You're going to get there eventually, but you're just going to have to do it correctly, bring on the right people, and ensure that we're not turning around and all of a sudden sticking a stick in our bike wheel once we get going, because this is a thing at the moment. It's people are seeing it.
I think it's a thing, but I also think it's important that we do it the proper way this time round, right? So we have the oversight and we have the whatever we need to make these teams function. And this is also why I'm so adamant at saying the layer 1 team cannot grow above 8, because that is the industry standard for a development team. And if we create another development team, let's not create that, in the same room as the first one. Let's create another cell so we become decentralized and we become more, resilient and shit like that. So this is why I'm also hoping that when we have to spin up a layer 2 team, if we ever find, people and funding for that to keep that running, that we can set up a new, COC where, I might not be part of the layer 2 team, and maybe you can be a member of that COC from a community outreach and some other, the point is that Steve and I and Ed largely just care about constructing self-sustaining, well-funded cells that can take care of the responsibilities of this network. And this is also why, by and large, we don't really care that much about IBC. I'm getting into thin ice here, I know. But IBC is like integrating to the other Cosmos chains, and that's clearly an important thing. But let's get our own house in order first, right? Otherwise, we're just opening up the floodgates anyways for people to siphon value of our network.
Exactly.
And this is why I'm like, I support people who want to do IBC stuff, but I'm much more focused on getting our own platform, running, sorted, getting processes running where people are doing, work every day in a meaningful manner that progresses on a shared set of goals that the investors by and large can agree on.
Yeah, we shouldn't sprint before we can walk. Opening up IBCs is a big can of worms, and there's a lot jammed in there. So you've I don't know if you know, but there's currently, I think it's near to 300 million or 300 billion. I could be wrong. That's going to be released from IBCs, just from Wrap Luna.
Yeah, I'm not keeping track. I read something, a post like that from, I think, Oxius earlier today on Twitter, something like that. I largely don't care. I'm gonna be honest with you, and I've said this many times before. The CV20 tokens are all just foreign currency. They're all synthetic derivatives, and whenever somebody bought something like that, they basically bought, an IOU for the actual crypto without any guarantees of getting the actual crypto. So, I mean, I can't be responsible for what people buy, but I can advise them to try to avoid these type of products if they don't have a high degree of trust in the people selling them, meaning that they expect these people to, at some point, reimburse them to an actual underlying asset or something like that. And this is also why I think in general the partition pools concept and commodity tokens are much more interesting, because they're protocol tokens. They live on the layer 1. So we can treat them as part of our sovereign wealth and overall money supply, and regulate them in a way that actually works in the real world, rather than just having these token factories sitting around spraying out new tokens every day.
Yeah, I see. It's funny you should mention commodity pools again, because it's like someone's given you the list. I know no one's given you the list, but I have commodity pools on the list because what I know with the whole idea, we've spoken about it in nearly every podcast. I really support them for the simple fact they stay in the system.
Yeah.
They can't be manhandled. They can't be altered. It's a good route to
And
go.
most importantly, if we do it right, whenever you create a new one, you destroy a small fraction of our M1 supply or LUNC and USTC, which will never come back again, right?
Microburns.
Rather than having CV20 token contracts that anybody could literally create any day and then mint a new supply of something. And again, crypto has value because it is inflation resistant due to its deflationary characteristics. I mean, Ethereum ran for the first year with a built-in supply of 5% inflation, right? That means that before the I think it was the Berlin hard fork, Ethereum would basically just mint 5% new ETH every year. Now, somebody quickly in the early days of crypto did the math on that, and they're like, okay, in 100 years, the supply of Ethereum is going to balloon to that. So that problem was keeping the price of Ethereum artificially suppressed. That's why they instituted, they removed the inflation component, and ever since then, pretty much every crypto you can think of has some sort of deflationary component to it if it actually becomes valuable, right? So that is very important. Otherwise, you just keep on diluting stuff forever, which is what happened with Luna when the DPEG occurred, right? So we know how that works.
That was
And,
some
and and this
dilution.
is why people should, they should sometimes resist. I tend to tell people that, if they come and ask me, should we create this token to burn this other token? Like, no, if it doesn't have utility, if this token you're creating into the world does not bring anything in there other than future debt, then don't do it. Find another token that already exists, that already is being used, and then invest in that or use that, right? Because otherwise, we end up, in 10 years' time with 200,000 different blockchains and a billion different cryptocurrencies and more supply than we could ever use in the lifetime of the entire fucking galaxy, right? And that's not really inducive of creating value long term. That just keeps inflating stuff.
It keeps siphoning and then siphoning again and then siphoning again into more and more of these, shit coins to put them at their best.
Yeah.
So we're even seeing more of them pop out. We've just added a couple more coins to the burn ticker because, people like creating coins to burn, but ultimately it just creates a siphon for people to buy. It doesn't do anything for our system at all. So I know you're definitely aware of Duncan's repeg because I know a lot of people are. What are your thoughts on this, Tobias? Have you been through it a lot? I know it's long-winded.
No, I haven't. I've read through it at a glance because one of the other Twitter members asked me to. And I mean, roughly, Siggy is kind of like an amalgamation of a lot of the other ideas I've seen. Some of the changes he wants to make could, by and large, be accounted for within the system, more specifically the reward policy. And there's some general purpose concerns about doing on-chain arbitrage of any manner because inherently our system is very slow. So we still have to deal with can we slow down the block speed, or what do we do in order to ensure that we have the right price point when we do these kinds of things and so on. With that said, I think we can make it a reality, just like I think we could make the ideas that Alex and Fafi spoke about a reality if we acknowledge that we have some core stuff we need to do vis-a-vis a custody keeper to enable our system to be able to basically own its own API keys so it can call out to second layer systems and do stuff based on a signal that it receives, obviously, because it can't really do anything on its own. And then we also need to look at slowing down the network if we are to reasonably hope to be able to provide a price point at every block, right? Otherwise, we would end up slashing the validators into submission and killing the consensus. Because as it stands right now, a validator needs to vote on every 5 blocks. If it doesn't do that, it gets jailed. Well, it gets slashed and then eventually jailed, right? And the vote that takes place, that it votes on the price of Luna. But as we've talked about before, that leaves a 4-block window of opportunity for an adversary sitting in the layer 2 to try to co-opt any mechanism we built on the layer 1 to do these kind of things. So I think, again, I've always been a proponent of trying to find a way to make basically the MMA system that we have a fully fledged DEX, because I don't think we need a layer 2 DEX. We just need to keep building on the layer 1, and we will inherently have a fully functional DEX, and that is what our specific Cosmos, blockchain application that we call Terra Classic should do, and not a lot else. Then we can build other chains for other stuff, right? And I think Siggy provides a good, baseline to start maybe finally getting to a point where we could get all of the quants to get into a big happy fucking kumbaya circle and agree on something. Because this is actually one of the things that I tried to push both Alex when he was the TR quant lead and Fafi when he was the TR quant lead to fucking write a white paper for the quant camp where they all agreed on one thing. But the fact of the matter is that they all still to this date have varying views on how things should work. And it would be really great to take all of these bright mathematician style guys and just get them to agree on one goal. And then I don't really care if that goal might not work, right? We'll find that out in development. But let's at least agree on one path. And maybe Siggy can provide that beacon to start that debate and maybe get these people together and agree on a roadmap that the developers can actually, try to implement.
Yeah, I think they've got their work cut out for them, but with anything of this substantial planning, you're going to have some serious work cut out. In theory, you're looking at TFM, TerraSwap, Astroport, MEXC, and Binance among, various others that you're going to need to get on board. You guys yourselves having to make changes, slow down the block speed. This is a lot of work, but things like this, they can pay off big time. And like you're saying, theory and then even running, tests and various different simulations, it's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like at the end of the day, you're just gonna have to put it out there, and systems like ours are very akin to a type of architecture that we call function as a service, right? So you basically break your entire distributed system into independently scalable functions that can scale both horizontally and vertically, so to speak. The problem with these types of hyper-performant event-driven cloud systems, which can literally do the Twitters of the world, is that they become subject to something that we like to call emergent behavior, meaning that we can reason about the state of the system if we port it in a snapshot. We can reason about how the system is implemented by looking at the code. But just like people who build AI cannot reason about how their AIs actually work, we can't reason about how certain parts of these types of hyper-scalable function-based systems will actually behave. And we call this emergent behavior. It's like, something manifest that we didn't expect. And blockchains are very much akin to this type of thing. You can write a smart contract that does one thing well, right until some other person writes another smart contract that changes something that your smart contract is dependent on. And then if you think back to the I think it was called Solar Storm hack on Ethereum back in the good old days, where somebody found a way to basically create some sort of echoing across smart contracts or something like that. You can really get into some nasty business in situations like this. And you might have designed, the system with the best intentions in mind. Again, look at the DAO hack in Ethereum. That hack occurred because they basically designed a very simple, stack-based virtual machine with 1,024, entries in the stack. And then some dude in Eastern Europe somewhere, he found out how to overload the stack so it would create a 1,025th entry, which would then allow him to send money back to himself from this smart contract, right? So that is why these things are still, alpha technologies. That is why we're still on the cutting edge. That is the risk reward you buy into when you invest in these kind of things.
Yeah, we like you say, you're pioneers. When you're doing something, you are pioneering most of it in. A lot of the time, you've got to be innovative. You've got to think new things up. And there's been so many of these. So the Solar Storm hack, I'm not aware of, but I'm aware of other hacks, prior to this with Bitcoin, even going through different stages itself from hacks. So changing a smart contract in one place for a very simple example for people that are listening. We've recently upped the 5x gas fees. This changes everything on a smart contract level that we do with all of our staking modules. Everything changes, everything just from that one small change. So no, I totally get it. But they've got their work cut out for them. So really, hopefully, they can figure this out, like you're saying, get some good minds together, some good mathematicians, and actually just figure this out.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping, at least.
So I think, I don't know if other people are thinking about this a lot, but it's definitely on my mind a lot. The canonical repository. What's going on with this? Have you got like kind of an update where that's going?
I'm actually about to write a governance proposal tomorrow, so just basically tell people that they should just choose a commit whenever a release is produced, and then we flip the burden of security onto the validators, which is actually a good thing. So overall, we're working on preparing that proposal. Unfortunately, again, we've been a bit delayed this sprint due to matters wholly outside our control, unfortunately.
Yeah.
At least unless we had a crystal ball or future foresight or time machine or something
You
like that.
better not have a crystal ball.
I do, but unfortunately it doesn't work.
Is it one of those ones that you shake and it tells you things?
Oh, no, that's a snow globe, mate. Oh, no, that's actually the magical 8-ball, right? Yeah, sorry, I got it confused.
Yeah, I think I had a snow globe as a kid. You used to shake it.
I had a snow globe.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Love them. No, I think overall right now we are just, back on track again. We are trying to settle the bill with Notional so we can get them to quietly move on. The layer 1 team members have been paid today, so they're all happy. That's obviously great to get, the actual reward at the end of the month. And now we are just trying to, look forward. We're going to be focusing on the 105 release a bit, just to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And then we're going to start preparing the 106 release, which will include the Binance whitelist, which I'm happy to report we have also implemented a parameter feature for and an upgrade handler, which means that we can actually make it governance controlled straight out of the gate. It will be born with the whitelist addresses as part of the initial upgrade handler. And this is also why we are going to be very restrictive around our GitHub org until after the 106 release, because the second that code goes into main, those addresses are going to be monitored like 24/7. And until that code goes into mainnet, nobody gets to touch that code.
And this keeps Binance happy, correct?
Yes.
This is very important also for people that are listening, that we keep Binance happy. Some people would debate, putting them on their own whitelist is a bit like, kind of showing them more favor over others, but realistically, they've shown us the ultimate favor over.
Without entities like Binance and all nodes for that matter, this network would not exist today.
Exactly.
Right? And I've said many times, I'm not. I'm an anti-authoritarian, I guess you could say. I do enjoy structure in my work life, but I understand that when it comes to Binance, we just have to kiss the fucking ring, right? They are the OG godfather of crypto. They own the volume. They own the industry. We can not agree with them. That's our, right as individuals. It's our democratic right as a network. But they can also just decide not to list us. That's their right as a business, right? So that's the balance we have to try to keep in mind. And then we have to obviously make sure that they don't push it too far. But by and large, I think considering the volume that they're generating in our network in terms of liquidity from trading and so on, it's a fair ask that the internal transactions between their wallet addresses is not taxed, right? Because they have security concerns. They need to rotate these wallets at an interval, otherwise they become susceptible to hacking.
Yeah. I think they had a big issue around, them burning and being liable for a remint. He definitely wasn't happy around that. We know that. So hopefully this gets the burning back on track I know for a developer standpoint, burning can look the way it looks to them, but to the community, it's a whole different symbol a lot of the time. And Binance just getting back on track it's more good news to get the bike moving, get us back to where we was.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that the reminting problem, if we can call it that, was simply just a consequence of our combined lack of knowledge of the system when we implemented the burn tax originally. Because, I mean, when we implemented the burn tax, none of us really understood the system as, a whole. I had read through the code, Radar had read through the code, and
It
so
wasn't
on.
designed to do this, was it?
It was not designed to do this, but by and large, there was two competing strategies, right? Now, my original burn tax proposal actually centered around introducing a new variable in the treasury keeper. That would have been an opt-in model, meaning that nothing would have gotten burn taxed unless we had explicitly implemented in the code. The problem is that state machines are, difficult enough in themselves. Replicated state machines is just an order of magnitude more difficult. So after extensive debates back and forth, Ed and I agreed that the alternative of using the stability tax was preferred, because then we knew that the burn tax would be applied to the system in its entirety. But we also knew how the Sinuage system worked. But because the Sinuage was set to all be burned at that point in time, then that wasn't really a problem, right? So we were basically just tweaking an existing lever. That was the minimum effort with the maximum impact, thus the safest choice at the end of the day. But the problem was that then we started tweaking other levers in the system, and that obviously, started creating remint scenarios, because by and large, the way we collect the burn tax is by basically just, burning it. But burning is really a misnomer. In general, we should probably call it freezing, because the burn wallet is just a wallet that owns that belongs to the treasury, right? Or the treasury model. Now, theoretically speaking, I could write code that would allow the treasury to touch that wallet and do stuff with that wallet. That's what the Sinuage system does, kinda, right? So when we burn stuff, we're actually just freezing it for eternity, but that doesn't mean that we can't unfreeze it if we wanted to. So this is basically what happened with the remint, is that stuff started reminting because we had decided to use the system as is rather than try to implement a new very specific feature to basically try to, send this money to an address we had generated where we had actually thrown away the password, right? That would probably be the better way to create a true burn wallet. But how do we then verify that the wallet that is created actually has its private key destroyed? Can we trust the people who are doing that? There are certain problems with that aspect in a decentralized system, which is why it's preferable to let the modules control their own wallets and then just not create a situation where the code will mismanage burn wallets, right?
Pretty much, you're going to need to have access to the canonical repo to actually write that code to get it in and have it merged
Not
and
really,
everything.
not with the non-canonical thing, right? At the end of the day, you just need to convince the validators to take an update that will do stuff. I mean, and this is also, if you want to talk security, I've been very vocal about this ever since I got into the chain. Most validators to this day run an Oracle feeder because you have to. If you don't run the Oracle feeder, you're going to get slashed and jailed, right? Now, what does the Oracle feeder do? The Oracle feeder takes your mnemonic private key, the thing that all nodes shouldn't touch, and puts it on your local disk encrypted with a SHA-1 private key. That means that anybody who touches the Terra code has not only privileges but also access to exfiltrate that file. And since it's only encrypted with SHA-1, that can be freely decrypted by anybody who understands, a bit of brute force computing. And that would expose all private keys for all active validators in the network. Right, so sometimes it's important to understand what the big vectors are and deal with them in the right order. And we are actually also, as part of the 106, preparing to release the patched Oracle feeder that I actually implemented months ago that has the proper level of security, wherein even if I steal that file from your disk, it's still gonna take me at least a few hundred years to crack the key rather than a few days.
That's exactly what we want to hear in this situation, Tobias. I want to hear solutions to the problems that we have. I don't want to hear
nothing gained from pointing fingers if you can't fix the problem.
Exactly. So well pointed out. Honestly, it's one of these situations now where I just feel like we're heading in the right direction. We're gonna have hiccups.
We are. We're always gonna have hiccups, and we have to keep in mind that decentralized organizations are difficult. I mean, we don't have an HR department in the layer 1 team, right? We can't screen people beyond a certain point when we bring them in. We can simply just try to assess them and have a few meetings with them. But as we all know, when we go to a job interview, we're always on our best behavior. You don't really learn how anybody is as an individual until you've worked with them for a while. And that's just gonna, happen. I mean, there's gonna be other people along the way who's gonna be volatile and exotic and interesting and all of that. And we're just gonna have to try to do the best that we can. But I think, right now we have the most promising group of layer 1 developers that I have seen since I joined this community. We have people who, have insights into how the original code was created. We have people who have lots of experience with Cosmos SDK. We have young, super intelligent developers like Frag. He's sometimes too intelligent for his own good. And then we have some old seasoned war dogs like myself and Ed who can try to bring some, wisdom and experience. And I really like that flow. But I would really love to maybe just, continue our honeymoon period for another 2 months and maybe get people to quiet down so we can focus. Because, I mean, we not only get hurt from these things, we actually do get, we do take it personal. We do try to generate value and solve complex problems, and it's pretty demotivating, when you wake up at the end of a month and then everybody's crying murder on Twitter, because I mean that doesn't really give you an indication that you're doing anything correct, even though the entire team knows that they're doing the right thing in the right order and all of that. So yeah, but I mean overall that's part of life. There's always going to be people that complain, and I think, you know, this time we're probably going to power through. Do we survive the next time? I don't know, but that's life, right?
Yeah, it's all unknown when you're jumping stuff like this. But yeah, the whole what you're saying about like going on Twitter and then, you know, getting grief over the most weirdest of things, and I totally get that and understand it so well with all of the different stuff I'm doing in GameFi as well. So I really do get that. So I no doubt you know who I think it's Rabbi Jebediah, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. He's got a proposal coming up for a minimum commission fee to 5% and then lowering that validator maximum voting power to 10%. What are your thoughts on this?
I think the minimum commission is a good idea.
Minimum commissions are absolutely brilliant idea.
I think, again, the BFT lowering it's pointless, right? I mean, it was an initial thing to avoid one person coming in and co-opting consensus when we re-enable staking to take over the entire chain, right? At the end of the day, capitalism will decide who has how much voting power. And if this barrier becomes a problem for them, they will just create another validator node with another wallet and, insert enough delegation power to push it into the active set. So rather than having one node of 20%, they'll just have two nodes of 10%. And then they get to play some sort of shell game to make it seem like these are different. I mean, let's not try to control that which we cannot control, right? That's my view on the second thing.
I absolutely. For me, it's similar to what you're saying. It's not going to achieve, the second part's not actually going to achieve anything. That issue lies with the way it lies. All nodes have been around since before all of us. I think they are Columbus 1 guys, if I'm not mistaken. I could be mistaken, but I'm sure they've been there from the get-go. A big company like that is not going to suddenly.
Been around for a long time.
Yeah,
they're trying to push out delegators. Who
does that?
I'm actually not sure that the 10% thing would actually do anything to them. I think it only prevents them from getting new delegators. It wouldn't prevent them from actually participating in consensus. So even lowering it to 10% wouldn't like force them down to 10%.
No,
they would still have to voluntarily get delegators to redelegate, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, in general, I'm not a big fan of changing parameters too often, right? It creates instability, it creates uncertainty, and it creates emergent behavior. So whenever we change these parameters, we should typically try to test it a lot before we do it. And the fact of the matter is that we don't have the testnet capacity to do that, right? There's not a lot of the active validators that actually run testnet nodes. So maybe we should focus on, growing the testnet a bit more, so we can get to a point where we can do this type of experimentation without affecting mainnet. And then we can change as many tiles as we want, as often as we want. And every time we break the system, we can always just reset testnet to whatever snapshot and try over again. And that will create a realm where it will be a lot easier for people to experiment and figure out the consequences of these types of changes.
For people listening who don't really grasp that, LUNC Penguins runs on a similar concept, and we always revert back to a certain screenshot if something goes wrong. So I totally understand that. So we were speaking previously about this whole making it, easier for validators to become validators, because the biggest issue right now I find is our high, aside all nodes and a couple of others, the majority of our validators, they're building on Luna. They're not building anything here anymore. They're not interested in here. we have
No. I mean, our validators are basically network marketeers, right? Let's be honest
yeah.
about that. Let's not try to put them into the realm of hyper performant cloud engineers who spin up S3 buckets in their sleep. That's why we need an offering that's a lot easier to reason about, and that is what all nodes provided. I think we can build a better self-service package for home builders who want to run their own nodes but don't necessarily know how to. But that's going to require some time because, as you know from your stack, you have to run Terra D because that's the binary that runs the actual node that communicates with the other nodes. Then you have to run the Oracle feeder because if you don't get to do that, then you're going to get slashed and jailed. Then you have to run the FCD, which is basically just a Postgres database that indexes the blockchain for fast querying. And in a not too distant future, you might also have to run a relayer, right? So this stack of things that you need to operate just keeps growing. And all the technical minded builders, they moved over to Luna long ago. We know
Mm-hmm.
this, right? So these people that people are perceiving as being capable of running these highly complex setups, they just don't exist. There are
I'm
clearly some here, but the majority
It
are
takes
not.
time. This is the thing, and I was explaining this in my previous episodes recently. I'm 3-4 months away from getting all of the equipment myself. It takes time. I don't want to jump into something straight away that I have a very, very little understanding of. It's like buying a computer back in the 90s and then sticking LimeWire on it and then going and using every single bank card in your house. It's
Yeah,
not.
no, for sure. It is literally the equivalent of doing that. And even if you, I mean, let me put it this way, right? I ran for 3 years. I ran a platform product at DFDS, right? So basically platform engineering. We had 40 feature teams. All of these teams were what we call cross-functional teams. That means that they consisted of business analysts, of business owners, developers, DBAs, front-end developers, whatever. And all of them had to build something akin to distributed systems, but they didn't really master the cloud. So we had to come in and manage all of that complexity and build a lot of safeguards because one guy, shall not be named, he decided one day to take his AVS admin credentials and stick them in his JavaScript library that went on our front page. Right? And clearly some Russian figured that out and started spinning up crypto miners in our AVS data centers across the globe. It didn't take us long to react to that and spin down. I think they spun up roughly 1,000 nodes. We
Oh,
did the math. It
Jesus.
cost us like $5,000, but they were trying to spin up 1,000,000 nodes, right? So you can do the math of what it could have cost, but because we had alerts and observation and monitoring all of that, we could react to these things. And this is essentially the complexity of these style of things, and you can't ask homeowners to deal with that. Technology is not becoming less complex, it's just becoming more abstracted because of tooling, right? But when it becomes more abstracted, it also means that a lot of people become what we call citizens developers. They're not real developers per se. They're people who can reason about using Vysyvyk editors and various tool stacks to compose things that will ultimately turn into software. But they don't really understand the magic of what turns it into software, right?
It's like using a tool to make a tool.
Yeah. So the bottom line here is just that if we want to succeed in growing the network, we have to think beyond the security model that the original Cosmos ideology is based on, which is very much we're going to air gap our server when we set it up, and then we're going to hope we don't have any malicious dependencies that will steal our environment variables and our keyring values and whatnot, and then we're gonna set it up and somehow magically reconnect it to the internet by the time we send the TX out. And then we're going to hope nobody hacks our Oracle feeder, because, by the way, that has our private key encrypted with SHA-1, so that's great. That's not really a recipe that works in the modern world. That might have worked a few years ago, but with the attack vectors we have right now, I mean, NPM and Node.js are one of the most plagued ecosystems when it comes to supply chain attacks. There's a Russian hacker organization that has roughly 800 curated NPM packages that are all Trojans. They're all what we call remote access Trojans. You download the NPM dependency and it starts siphoning off your environment variables and all sorts of shit, and DNX exfiltrates that out, because everybody needs DNS, so that's never blocked in your firewall, right? We need to solve all of that. We need to create a solution where you spin up a standardized Kubernetes operator offering on a standardized Kubernetes platform, using secure vault integrations that uses encryption style protocol logic to make sure that the data is never exposed to anybody but the application itself. And then create a world where people can spin all that up with one click and a few easy steps.
Thus the
That
need.
is what will enable us to grow the network. That is what will revolutionize the way that validators are hosted, but it will also require a higher premium for running the validators, right? There is a cost on this easy operation cloud thing, but that cost is balanced out over time if the value of the network grows, right? Because the more we build, the more the price grows, the more profitable it should become to be a validator at the end of the day.
Yeah, the more the rewards become more. This is all the need to become more incentivized. So like the reason why I agree with the raising of that 0% commission rate is for the simple fact it would then force people to have to do stuff. You couldn't just become a validator, high up, get good VP, be comfy, not worry about anything whatsoever, just by, providing that 0% commission. There's no incentive for good people to rise to the top. And we need those incentives.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Otherwise,
I just donated, not donated, but I just delegated 100 million LUNC to what's Chrissy's validator called, whatever, right? Because I figured she charges a 5% commission, and that goes back into paying my salary. So why not? I mean, we have to start delegating with people who charge a commission to incentivize these people to grow their business, right? The longer we avoid doing that, the longer it will take before our validator set becomes healthy and stable. And again, we have to understand that our validator set is not like any other validator set in most other chains, because most of these people are massive backholders who are basically trying to bring in their networks to grow this network, right? And we have to cater to that. That is our future. If we don't cater to that, we have no future.
We've never seen anyone realistically, and without even going back to myself and saying, well, I've done things like this. We just don't see people building things for the community. We built LUNC Penguins to solve a huge data problem. We built LUNC Blaze to solve the biggest burn-in scams that were going around. You're not seeing people seeing, right, here's a problem. How can I provide a solution? And if I can't provide a solution, what else could I do? And like you're saying, you can support these projects. Because I've been thinking recently myself, I burn 50% of our yield each month. Why not burn 25% and then split that remaining 25% out between the current 3 projects that are building in GameFi and then the L1 development team, and just trying to incentivize people, even with it being a small amount to each person, at least you're trying to incentivize a way.
But that is the kind of thinking we need, mate, right? I mean, we have to look at it from this perspective. If our network is a host, we're all parasites living inside that host. Some of us are, antibodies. Some of us are other types of whatever cells. You are very much in the category of an antibody if you look at the host being a sick host that has a lot of toxic debt. And we understand that there are currently a lot of traders holding massive bags with the sole intent of trading, and we should respect that, right? They are in a way also keeping us alive by
So
providing
important.
liquidity. But it is now the job of the antibodies to come in and start burning out this debt through sweat equity. It is the only way to reconstitution. Even the real world has embraced the quantitative tightening. So it can't really even be a debate anymore, right? We need to build ourselves out of this debt trap. And the only way to do that is to find an economic way that works. In my fashion, it's like, okay, I flip part of my salary into LUNC every month, and I put that LUNC with, a delegator that charges a commission and pays towards the L1 team. That becomes a self-sustaining loop that always burns a bit of stuff from burn taxes and so on, but it also keeps, a very active network marketeering group, somewhat healthy, and so on and so forth. You're doing the same things with the long penguins. That also creates this effect of slowly burning away the debt. And if we all do that, sufficiently, the debt mountain will be eroded by 1,000 streams of water just trickling down its sides slowly. And then over a period of time, the mountain will erode to the point where there's no mountain left.
Just a nice flat platform with stability again. And stability leads to more coins being delegated. It leads to just more people wanting to be around this stable system, because that's what people look for in crypto.
Stability creates network effect. Everybody in crypto wants stability, right? To the point where they're willing to create stable coins that are valued in the billions. This is again why I've always been a proponent of saying I would rather not want to see our price fluctuate hundreds of percent over months. I would just rather have it go up, I don't know, more than inflation every year, and I'll be happy. And then do it in a slowly manner, because the problem is that a lot of people who are pushing for fast profits, they are inherently risk takers, right? It's part of their business actually to be risk takers and identify risk reward opportunities. But that's not really conducive for, I think, the mom and pop style building community that we want or that we need. And that's why I think we need to balance this. We shouldn't discourage risk taking and quantitative magic and all of these fine things that people can do with tokens. But we should be very careful when we do it, because we don't get a do-over. If we fuck things up, there's no recovery. So it's probably best to, trust but verify, do things methodically, make sure that things are tested again and again and again. And that's a process to build up, the type of discipline and quality that you need in a place like this, to get to a point where we can maybe even start automating the deployments, right? Because if we put, let's say, 3 to 6 months work into it, we could probably make Cosmovisor work. We could probably create a setup where every time we push a change to the main branch in the core repository, a new release is automatically produced and generated. And that release is then run through a rigorous test suite of automated tests. And if everything works, that release is then automatically pushed to testnet, to a testnet where maybe all the validators were taking part. And then if that testnet worked and all of the second layer tests works on that testnet, it would automatically push the release to mainnet, and everything would work because we had tested everything, thoroughly through and through. This is basically what we call continuous delivery. And this is what any modern day enterprise invests millions of dollars every year in trying to achieve, because for them it's all about time to market. The faster that they can take an idea and turn it into software and push it into production, the faster they can start doing business.
And that's what we want. And we want business to be booming. That's what we need.
Well, yeah, wants and needs. We definitely want all of that, but I think that's going to be a slow process. We need to first build up our, you know, our own internal house before. I mean, I think we have a lot of people who are interested. We have some people who are on the fence, but just so you understand where I'm coming from, when we talk about business, I look mainly at, proper real world companies, not the type of business that you and I set up as our personal companies, but companies with 3, 4, 500 plus employees or even more, with actual supply chains or whatnot, who needs blockchain technology but haven't integrated it yet, right? Those are the type of businesses that we want, because if we can get a few of those, then we don't really need a lot more. But that's again, I think everything helps, and I think we're back to the, we should be happy for every single piece of, positive value any member in our community generates, and we should try to be critical without being disrespectful of people if we don't agree with them.
Yeah, be constructive. Don't try to just obliterate everything in sight once you figure. It's.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
mean,
some people just want to watch the world burn.
they do. They do.
Guard against those, but I mean, we can all aspire to try to do better, and I'm not a saint. I sometimes also lose my cool and lash out at people. It's part of the human condition. But if we're at least aware of when we did it, and we try to apologize to people if it's warranted, then that's what we should try to do. Because if we want to start, really talking business from a sense of let's do real world business, then we have to basically grow up and accept that nobody would want to do business with us in the current state due to our adolescence phase, right? And again, this is a growth thing. I'm not here for a 6 or 12 month thing, unless obviously it becomes unbearable at the personal level. I'm here for a long-term commitment. I think anybody who invests in LUNC should accept that it's gonna be a 10-year investment. But if we succeed, it's gonna be easily 200x. If we don't succeed, it's gonna be nothing. But that is the same value proposition that any other crypto offers you. So when people look across the spectrum of cryptos, we have the benefit of being the only crypto that has been so thoroughly diluted that nobody can really view the current price level as a bad entry point. You would have to be like in the realm of saying, I don't believe it will ever recover. If you do that, you should literally short the chain now, right? But if you believe the people who are working around this can construct a value network that they can bring value into and start interacting together around in metaverses and whatnot, then you should most likely not only buy long, but you should probably also go long, right? That's the view of it from a trader's perspective, at least.
100%. This whole, like, people think that we've popped, we've done what we're going to do, but we're just not close. We're just not there, and it's going to take time, slow steps.
I think our all-time high, if we disregard the $100 price print, is somewhere around 2 or 3 cents. That's a viable price target, right? That's where we can actually justify the valuation, and we've probably created some tokens or destroyed some tokens in the process. If we can get to that point, we're in good shape. And that, I think, should be our immediate focus. Everything above 2 or 3 cents is just meaningless, at least short term.
Yeah, that's it. Looking way in the future, which we're not. We're just taking this as it is. But no, I think, it's looking positive. It's looking good. And, I'm really looking forward to having our next podcast and seeing where we've got with these new updates. Hopefully not seeing a nuclear option. And
I always have a nuclear option, mate.
Kaboom!
I like nuclear options. They're very
Luckily,
swift and efficient.
the majority of people who would be affected are people like me.
Yes,
Exodus.
you are actually one, and you're taking it very well. And as well as
because at the end of the day, we've got to all compromise. We can't all just keep getting to this point and just go no, and then everybody running in opposite directions because we're all going to end. We have a bungee cord connected to us. That bungee cord is Lunar Classic. We're all coming back.
No, I think it is, but I think it works both ways. Like one of the things I enjoy about working with Strath is that he's a very gifted developer.
Oh yeah,
he's a layer 2 guy, but he's very opinionated, and he has a very strong view on creating a better world for the layer 2 developers, which is invaluable as a layer 1 architect because building a platform, you have 3 components. You have your logical architecture, and we can get into this in another podcast, otherwise we're going to go on all night. But you have the logical architecture. That's basically what Strath see at the LCD level, right? Then you have the physical architecture. That's what the actual code does in the layer 1. And then you have the knowledge architecture. That's what people need to know and understand in order to operate the system as a whole, right? And working with Strath, it's like he has some really great ideas from working on the kind of projects that you guys are doing, because you're doing some of the more complex DApp stuff around saying, oh, it would be great if we could somehow, do it so we could augment that. I'm like, hey, but maybe we can retrofit the SCD to collect more data and index so you don't have to store that, but maybe you can query write that. That's the kind of engagement that we need to have to ultimately create a better product, and this is why it's so important for me to also support and protect DAOs like yours and also validators like Allnodes, because for me, you guys are the future, right? You are the ones who are trying to do the hard work and not take the shortcut to a quick buck or whatever. And that's why we need to work together and figure out what you guys need and adjust the layer 1 platform in accordance so we can end up creating, a template for a repeatable process that other businesses can come in and do. And that is how we grow the network effect. And that is how we eventually get to $1 and beyond, right? Especially if we can re-enable the MMA and the on-chain stuff. But that's another talk.
Definitely. I've got to say something for the other podcast, but no doubt we'll have so much happen by then, we will have forgotten about it. But yeah, someone's definitely got to take the high road. Working with all of these people in GameFi that I have is secured 3 LUNC cases, on a broad scale that lead to microtransactions, which is, everybody's playing this symbiotic relationship with everything they're doing, and it's all for the greater good. But there are people that are drilling holes in the boat, and there are people that are bucketing the water back out. Dude, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. This one's run on for an hour and 20 minutes nearly, so won't hold you up anymore. Tobias, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on. Guys, stay safe. None of this is financial advice. Beware of scammers. Beware of anybody pretending to be myself or Tobias. Make sure you've got the correct people. You can hit me up in Telegram, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Our revenge is made possible by listeners like you. By listeners like you. Our revenge is made possible by listeners like you.